now. Okay, real quick, I just want to say that we're going to study the concept of the zodiac in relationships to the tribes of Israel. Um, since I've been started with the book of Numbers of Bamidbar, being in the wilderness, the first portion of that book speaks to the individual tribes and finding out that they are associated to various constellations in the zodiac. Now, one thing I want to dispel right away for any future listeners to this is that we were not talking about astrology per se. We're not talking about the tabloids where it says, "Oh yeah, well if you're a Virgo, do this, do that." The whole idea is that um, these things are not meant to control you, but you do need to understand them, and we have to pay attention at every single society that's around, including when I went to Mexico to Chichen Itza. There was an observatory there, and this observatory had was very complex, and what remained, and they paid particular attention. So we find all ancient cultures paying very close attention to the stars, to the zodiac, and it would behoove us to try to know if that's the case also within the camps of Israel, and we're finding out it's true. However, there's a difference. We're learning that, hey, these constellations do present a force upon us, a spiritual force, and therefore we have to be prepared and to adjust ourselves and to overcome them. So it's not meant as a zodiac to control us and to benefit from saying, oh yeah, well, we need to do this, we need to do that, but rather say, oh, we're under this zodiac right now. We have to be aware of this. We take advantage of that and we prepare ourselves to become better people and control that situation, its influence upon us, for much, much different perspective. So I'm going to use the term zodiac more in this presentation than astrology because our minds keep going to the fortune teller type idea. So anyway, Ross, let's get rolling here. So you and I had a great conversation yesterday. And what I couldn't believe is here I am studying the concept, and there you are also delving into the same idea. And neither of us knew it until we chatted, and I say blank, and then you go, are you kidding me? I'm doing the same thing,
Yeah.
which seems to be the way you and I operate now. There's definitely a synergy that's going on here. So I'm not quite sure how to proceed with this. So I'm thinking let's proceed the way we did yesterday, where I can present the camps of Israel, and then we'll
Yeah.
go from there. Now, real
Excellent.
quick, I had to get a reference in case I need it. I just realized I don't have it with me. So give me one moment. I'll be right back.
No problem.
Okay. Yeah, I got myself a book that has some information that I was researching through yesterday. And no, this is not my reference. There's only water in here with a little bit of apple cider vinegar. That's it. So nothing here to help me expand my thoughts and minds into another universe.
Shucks, I thought it was some secret formula. Dang.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I disappoint a lot of people. So let me share the screen here. Let me go to my PowerPoint. I should have asked you if you had anything you wanted to share so that,
Well, no, I'm anxious to see what you have, and then if there's anything to share or time afterwards, I will be more than happy to.
okay. All right. Move that. All right, here we go. So I put this together last night. You can see the camps of Israel here. When I prefer the top being east and not north, but that's okay. because most of us think in terms of north as being the top anyway. But when it comes to Israel, the top really is east. So if we go to the right, we see Reuben, we see Judah, and we see Issachar, just for reference. But what I did is I took the camps of Israel and the tribes that are there, and I associated them with the various uh, um, constellations. So you can see, for example, like Yehuda is Aries, and Benjamin is Sagittarius. So you get an idea of what is associated with which tribe and its orientation. So when we face east here, we have a group of three. North, we have a group of three. So the total of 12 tribes are actually put together. What is interesting, though, if you pay attention, just real quick note here, so you look at the west, you got Benjamin, and you really have the tribes of Joseph there. So the children of Rachel are entirely based on the west here. Now, when this place moved around, when the camps of Israel moved around, everything stayed in its spot and just moved north, south, east, or west, but the orientations were all still the same. So if you were going to go, let's say, east, then the eastern tribes would go first, and then the northern, southern tribes then would go, and then the western tribe would go, maintaining this structure in any direction they go. So if you were going to go north, then obviously Naphtali, Dan, and Asher move north first, and then everyone else follows accordingly. So that's the way this worked. Now I also put in here that the Levites are not connected to Zodiac in any way. They literally have their own connection to the light, their own connection to the Creator. They are not, pardon me, they are not influenced or at battle with the Zodiac. So they're exempt from this. So they have so it's almost like they are the center point of God's influence, the purifiers of the faith, so to speak. And then that all goes out towards the individual tribes. And you really have four basic families that deal with the tabernacle. And you have one family that deals with the north, one deals with the east, one deals with the south, one deals with the west. So that's the orientation here that takes place. So with that in mind, I also did this, I broke this out a little bit more. Whoops. And here's the 12 tribes. And you can see, I'm sorry, not 12 tribes, the 12 months in order, 1 through 12, the various constellations that are involved with each of the particular month, and then their association to the tribe. And if you follow the order that's within the book of Numbers, Bamidbar, in the first portion, the order of the tribes are in that order within the book. So they're closely synchronized with the month as well. And each month has its own zodiac. Each tribe have its own zodiac. When we are born, we have our own zodiac that we are born under. So the complexities of the relationship of those three, is how we are to transform and change ourselves. But for example, you'll see, I'll go back one. You see the first one is Yehuda. Whoops. And you see Yehuda right here on the east. So the first three are associated with those three tribes. Then it goes to Reuben on number 4, And where's Reuben? He's on the south side. And this is typically the way, even in the Zohar, this is the way they list. They'll go east, south, and then if we go more, we go down to Ephraim. Here we go to the west. And then the north will be last in that order. So we are cycling around the camp, which is the order that's in Numbers, first portion, and is the order of the months. So they're all correlated. So there's no mistake here about their association with these constellations and the months and the tribes. There's a sequence here. Now, to push it a little further here to facilitate, and I have not gone deep into this yet. This is a future study. You will see here we have a world level, meaning everybody has has a zodiac that they're born under. We have a tribal, which you could say is a nation. Sometimes tribes are considered a nation. And then we have the individual level as well. You may say, well, the individual level and the world level are kind of the same. They are, but they're not quite. Because at the individual level, it's just you, yourself, and that's it. I mean, there's nothing else. Tribal level, it's you and your neighbor and your identity with that tribe. So you're a group. And the world is another group. It's a group of individuals. But the key is it's for all tikkun or correction. And so you have to strategize and put all these three things together and figure out what to prepare for each month and the strength that the tribe has and the strength of the world, the people around you. So you have three different levels of tikkun that you have to consider and operate at. And that's something I haven't delved into yet. So those are the slides here. So Ross, you can go ahead and add your part to this, and then I will start synergizing.
Okay. Well, um, to incorporate what I was exposed to in the way of learning, Judah has always been associated as the lion,
Hmm.
which would implicate Leo. Okay, so according to what you have here, if Judah, as you have enlisted, is Aries, then I'm okay, a little bit off. And then the statement from Jacob at his death, he said, Reuben, you're unstable as water, which would most likely point a finger at Aquarius. Okay.
Which we have under Asher. Yes.
Exactly. Um, it said that, and this is where it gets a little difficult. Simeon and Levi are brothers, okay, in the fact of because of what they did in with Dinah, but that would indicate to some degree it might point a finger to Gemini, twins, brothers.
I'm just wondering if the reason why there's a difference is we are looking at the interaction between the influences of these zodiacs and different people. In other words, like you say, yeah, two brothers come together. How can they not be Gemini in a sense? So,
Well, they acted in unison.
right, exactly. So there is a unison aspect that you're mentioning there.
Mm-hmm. And then, of course, his statement of Dan was a serpent in the path. bites the heel of the rider, causing him to fall backwards. In one sense, you've heard of the precession and procession of the zodiac.
Okay.
It moves forward and backward simultaneously.
Mm-hmm.
So Dan seems to be the point at which the procession and precession are crossing. You begin to you hit a transition point, if you will. And if I'm not mistaken, he was listed as one of the last to be assigned a portion of land. As a matter of fact, he had to go out and find his own. Uh, that could be uh, equated with there's a couple of different names for it. I think you've heard of something like Ophiuchus, something, the great serpent. In
Okay.
he's an
Hmm.
unofficial 13th constellation, so to speak.
Yes. Oh, okay. I have heard about the 13th constellation. Yes.
Right.
Which is not
And
represented here, which makes me wonder if that's like the other side, so to speak. I don't know.
I don't know. I'm not that far into astrology
Yeah.
to know to comment, but I can see the associations through the word Joseph, the horns of an ox, bull. Okay, that's Taurus. Okay, I mean, um, I'm not saying what you have here is incorrect, but the language that was used in their descriptions would give an indication that might be a little bit more, well, at least up for consideration.
Right. So you could be dealing with the interaction. You can say what level are we at? Um, it's true. We have a time situation.
Mm-hmm.
If, for example, like an individual is born on a specific month, he has a particular attributes
Mm-hmm.
that are inherently part of him, typically. And then you have the tribes themselves that have an overall attribute, and then you have the world itself collectively, has all these
Mm-hmm.
influences. So I'm just wondering if it's what you're talking about is what they're is the interaction between these various zodiacs create or results in another constellation.
Right.
So maybe there is a mixture like that. Oh, it is Aries this month, and you were born under Aries. Um,
No, I'm not trying to
yeah,
indicate that that was
yeah.
their birth sign.
No, 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 no. I'm just saying that I think there's an interaction situation going on that may explain what you found. I wonder. Just because there's got to be interplay between all these and then a balancing point.
Right. Well, again, too, the winter solstice happens in the sign of Capricorn.
Okay.
And if I'm not mistaken, that I'm not entirely sure if that it is the transition point that I'm talking about, because Capricorn at one point was referred to as I believe the shining serpent or something.
Hmm.
Again, these different cultures had different depictions for these constellations. And I to sit here and tell you that any one is particularly correct. I mean, there was some agreement, obviously, on Orion and Pleiades and the Seven Sisters, which, you know, parts of one. I mean, you've heard nobody ever talks about the Big Dipper in the Bible.
Okay.
right. But then you have Ursa the bear, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. There's no depiction anywhere in here. So obviously, there are people that are able to see Big Dipper, Little Dipper, Ursa Major, Ursa Minor. There's all sorts of constellations, if you will, that can be envisioned, I guess is the best way to say it. You can see something. Somebody else can look up and just say, I just see a whole bunch of stars. I don't know what you're talking about, an archer with an arrow and a centaur. They think you're nuts, you know?
Yeah. What's funny, I can peer at an image of some kind, a tree or something like that, and if you really peer, you can see a face in it, stuff like
Mhm.
that.
Right.
You just put it together. It doesn't mean it is a real face,
No. Well,
but
some people will tell you that, there's an image of the rabbit in the moon, and others say the man in the moon.
true. Yes.
So essentially, I guess you could see what you want to see,
Mm-hmm.
or you'll see how you're wired to see. But nonetheless, I mean, the language, at least, Judah is a lion, um, Reuben unstable as water, uh, Simeon and Levi were brothers, Dan a serpent. There seems to be some indication of some form of accepted universal zodiac signs that are being referenced here.
Right. Also, what might help here is if we take a look at this slide, we see the 12 months, the
Mm-hmm.
12 signs, the 12 tribes. And what is very interesting is, for example, you look at Nisan as Aries. The very opposite of Aries is Tishri, Libra. In other words, if you go 6 months beyond or six zodiac signs beyond the one you're looking at, that is considered the opposite.
Right.
In other words, it is meant to be used as a counteraction to that
Right.
sign. And I often wonder, now that you're talking, is if you do that, let's make an addition or a subtraction out of this. We take Aries and we add Libra to it. Does that sort of equals potentially yet another sign? So, you know what I'm saying? Because I think because I'm looking at the camp. I'm just doing a visual here.
Mm-hmm.
Here we have the camp and we have the opposite. So Aries would be Yehuda and Tishri is Libra, which would be Ephraim. That would be the opposite, so to speak. And you would go through this, literally create, connections between all of these. And in the middle is the balance of all 12. All 12 of those influences, the balance is the tabernacle. The balance are the Levites that are in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I'm thinking out loud. I got to do more
No, you're
research,
fine. You're
but
fine.
I'm wondering if that may help explain why you would look at Simeon and
Levi.
Levi as brothers, and you can put Gemini on it. That may be a one plus the other equals type situation. I don't know. I'm wondering. If you could literally do that, gonna be more research there.
Mhm. Mhm.
So
Well,
that,
again,
yeah,
this is all research anyway, so.
right, exactly. And we know from Genesis 1 that it talks about the signs in the sky. And the signs in the sky, the word that's used there, the Hebrew word, really means character or letter. So we are to read the sky. We are to read. Remember, these constellations are physical manifestations of a spiritual thing.
Well, it specifically says for signs and seasons and the beginning of years.
Right.
If
So
I'm not,
yeah, you're calculating time, you're calculating the influences, and so on and so forth. And it really isn't that a definition of a zodiac?
I would have to say so.
Yeah. Interesting. Okay. What else?
Well, at this point, I mean, that would require someone or groups of people to be avid astrologers.
Right.
At, and by doing so, you're able to determine the seasons.
Yep.
Uh,
When to
I
plant the
mean,
seeds. Yep.
exactly. And as far as the moon goes, we've got what we call blue moons, harvest moons, blood moons. There's just any number of references to the phases of the moon. And who's to say how long that they've been around? I mean, uh, those terms, I mean, harvest moon, planter's moon, whatever. There's just, I don't know. Well, you'd have to know seasons in order to determine which moon it is. Otherwise, you're just looking up, seeing it go through its phases.
Yeah, we see in ancient man how important it was to know. I mean, we see it within the Mayans, the Aztecs,
Mm-hmm.
the Nazcas, the Nazca lines, and the Nazcas, the Romans, the Egyptians, the Babylonians, the Sumerians. I mean, every
Every
culture, all
culture.
every culture all through the world, it was so important for them to know these things
Mm-hmm.
and to calculate them so they knew what they needed to do as far as like planting, for instance, like we were saying.
Right.
Now, what is interesting, so within Kabbalah, we are taught that um, the moon phases are very important because when you take a look at the month,
Mm-hmm.
let's use um, yeah, just any month. We'll stick with Aries. So we have Aries. The first month, Nisan, is a very positive month. It's a month of miracles. It's a month of capacity to change in a positive way. The greatest part of that month is the 15th, 16th of that month, because that's when the moon is full. So the amount of fullness in the moon represents the amount of positive energy, potential energy of that month. So the high point of that month is Pesach,
Mm-hmm.
leaving slavery, leaving restriction, Egypt, Yet Mitzrayim in Egypt in Hebrew literally means restriction. So we removed ourselves from the restriction. A miracle, removing ourselves from that restriction, took place on the highest positive point in the highest positive month for the year, Nisan.
Well, again, restriction from, shortened daylight hours.
You could say that. You can also say restriction, just to keep out of the astrological thinking for the moment. Um, to follow God, to do as God wills. So it's an energy that we can tap into, and all these months represents energies, available energies, for good or bad. Anyway, I just wanted to mention that about the moon.
Oh no, that's perfectly fine. But and that's what I've been trying to get into my head is uh because again, oh that's voodoo, oh that's witchcraft. Forget about all that nonsense, the
Yeah.
stars and but obviously and that is wrong to do because if they were so dependent upon it, literally that was the only clock they had. And because of what we've done with our technology, I don't think, well, there are a number of individuals who still can look up and say, okay, well, we've got, a certain number of days before we get into the winter solstice, and then we're going to get
Yes.
this moon. And I mean, they could still read the clock all day long.
But they also read it in a sense of, oh, um, the longest day of the year,
Hmm.
the shortest day of the year
Hmm.
represented certain deities or a
Hmm.
certain religious belief. And it became a religion in and of itself, which was never the intention.
No, I tend to think of it as if they knew when these days were,
Hmm.
and they happen, okay, well, then they would have a celebration of sorts.
Correct.
Hey, the longest day of the year, yay, let's all have the party, whatever, right?
Yes.
Or here comes the winter solstice, let's have a end of the harvest season meal, and we're going into winter now. They would have these gatherings to commemorate that particular time. One moment, please.
No problem.
Uh, but it may have been viewed as a religious ceremony. I mean, like, okay, we have pilgrims that came here to America, and then they met with the tribes, and they all had an agreement. Hey, let's get
Well,
together and have a meal, a celebratory harvest meal. They do it, they call it Thanksgiving. And then years later, somebody goes, okay, we're going to make that a holiday.
yeah, yeah. No, I see where you're going with that. I'm also thinking to myself where people literally become restricted by the influences of the zodiac.
How so?
Well, what I'm saying is, let's just look at the negative aspects of certain, like cancer, for instance. Cancer, which is under Rubin. Cancer is a very uh, tough, emotional um, type of a person. Um, And, we in our world sometimes find excuses for our actions, saying, well, that's just who I am. That's what I am. And I'm not going to try to change it. That's what I mean.
Mm-hmm.
Where with the zodiac, we understand the positive and the negatives of it in
Mm-hmm.
relation to the positive and negatives of me, myself, and I. How do I combat the negatives? How do I take advantage of the positives and become even better,
Sure.
a better person? Or, I'm with this particular um, um, group, and I'm this type of a, and I'm on this type of a person.
Sure.
How do I
Personality traits.
right? How do I interact in a positive way with these influences?
Correct.
I mean, really, when you get down to it, this is all about interaction between us and others.
Sure.
How to love your neighbor is key in here. How to love God is key in here.
Okay, so somebody's a Leo, they're bullheaded,
Hmm.
uh, determined, and even if they're wrong, they're not going to admit it right straight out, right?
Yes.
Uh, Sagittarius, supposed to be teacher, educator, uh,
Hmm.
conversely, a student as well, and someone who is patient. Each one of these, apparently, if you're born at this time of the year, one should demonstrate these traits accordingly.
Right, right.
And I guess there's been enough observation over the course of time that there is some sustainability to these expressions.
Yes. It also helps us to rather,
Excuse me.
yeah,
I just
okay,
happen to think,
go for it. Spread
would the Aquarian be a kind of like a wishy-washy?
it.
You get the pun. Go ahead.
Yes. Well, I'm also thinking if you understand the sign of the individual and the environment they're in, the culture they're in, such
Mm-hmm.
as a tribe, also maybe the nation that they're in and the group of people that they're in, and you understand these three things, then when you educate or teach a child, you teach them according to that knowledge.
Correct.
And thus you're creating in time a better perfected person because now you're teaching them as an individual, not saying, okay, well, we're going to teach you blankety blank 101
Mm-hmm.
and 80% of the people can understand this and the other 20% will have to specialize on, special
Sure.
ed or something like that, rather than say, well, we know this student, that student, so on and so forth. So we have to specialize our teachings for each one of those students.
Right.
Hmm.
Well, we have the benefit of that today.
Yes,
Okay.
we do. Yeah,
And
we can
it's
do that.
obvious that a person's environment plays a very big role in their perception and reactions.
Right.
Okay. You grow up on the south side of Chicago, there's stealing, violence, gunshots, you're going to build yourself a defense mechanism and learn how to survive that environment. Whereas, you grow up uh, in a rural area of Wyoming and you're farming all the time and going into town and planting, harvesting, you're adapting to that environment. Take
Right,
either
right.
one and okay.
This
So,
this in particular is what I'm thinking is the spiritual aspect. But yes,
right.
you're right. You're right. You're right. You grow up in a farming community, you learn the best of farming. You grow up as an engineer, you do that, and so forth. I get that. Yeah, you tend to follow in your father's footsteps.
Yeah. Well, what I'm saying is their environment itself is a
Hmm.
teacher.
True.
That was just all I was trying to point out.
Also, I would like to point out in this picture, did you notice that there's corners? You got the northeast corner, northwest corner, you got the southeast,
Yeah.
southwest corner, or is it the the north, yeah, northeast, right? Okay. So what people don't realize is that when those for the nation say, "Hey, I want to join Israel," that's where they go. They go to the corners. The corners are for those who want to join you.
The
And then
corners
event,
of the field.
right. And then, that you can also see to fill in there as well. Not to fill in, I'm sorry, the talit. You can also see a rectangular talit or square talit there. Anyway, um, they would go there, and then eventually they would be assigned a tribe. So I wonder if it's not the tribes are voting saying, "Oh yeah, we want George here. Come on, George, come over here." No, 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 we want George. Maybe it's more of, here, George, you fit under this zodiac. You need to go over here or over there. Maybe that was the way that they joined them to different groups. I'm not saying like, oh, you're an Aquarius, we're going to be sent to Aquarius. Um, for
Right.
example, like I was saying before, you have Aries here. Maybe you're going to be put under Libra, which would be on Ephraim.
Right.
That way, there's a counteraction between there's a balance that's being struck between the attributes of that tribe and bring in these people so their attributes can be counterbalanced between the two. Just a thought, just a wild thought I just had. But anyway, I just figured I'd mention that. I'm
Well,
starting to think that this whole picture with the zodiac associated to the tribes is extremely important. Now I'm just trying to figure out the mechanics of how these things interact.
well, yeah. Basically, what you have is a template,
Yeah.
and you can extrapolate many things from it. It's like you said, the seat, right?
Mhm.
And according to tradition, if I'm not mistaken, the blue thread I think was in honor of Shem, right?
The blue thread represented the blue sky. I'm sure
Oh,
there's a lot of other associations to it.
right.
I do have a book that goes into detail about that stuff. But the techelet, which is the blue, yeah, it does represent a
Sky blue.
connection to the sky, which is interesting because if you say, okay, you got the corner of your talit with the fringes on it, and you have a blue cord, and that's what the people, the nations grab onto, then they're coming in through the corners, those empty corners, or the corners of the field, exactly like you say, oh yeah, well, the poor can go to the corners of the field and get food. So the poor represents what? Also spiritually poor. So they come in through the corners here to be incorporated. But there's a blue thread there, which, like I said, represents the guy, represents the various aspects of the creator. You could also say, love your neighbor as yourself, for I am Hashem. So you could say that Hashem is extending a spiritual thread out, showing you love your neighbor, love those outside of you, because I'm going to
Exactly.
draw them in. And what is going to draw them in? Well, if you take a look at it, there's 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 7 threads. The one is blue and the other 6 are white. So yeah, I'm representing man. Yeah. Anyway, I'm sorry. I'm starting to socialize things, but I'm starting to see. Oh yeah, you come through here. Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I guess what I'm going to need to do is do more study. Because we're definitely going to have to continue this in the future. Is I want to start looking at the kun, the concept of correcting ourselves and counteracting the negatives and enforcing and drawing from the positive of each of these constellations, what they represent in terms of time, the month, in terms of birth, in terms of the tribe you
Cycles.
belong to, and all these cycles are playing together. It kind of reminds me of that what do you call that? The calendar, Mayan calendar, or
Yes.
yes, where they have these 3 wheels or 2 wheel, whatever it is.
Yeah. The
To
Baktun, the Biktum.
yeah, 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 yeah. And how cool that is. How it's got these basic attributes and stuff, and they all connect at certain times in different varieties. And I'm starting to see something similar within the cocoon of the zodiac for us individuals, for us as a group, as us as a world. It's really interesting. I got to do more research on this. It's becoming more and more convincing to me.
Mm. Well,
Hmm.
no, when you say the word tikkun, what
Yes.
definition are you using?
Correction.
Correction, meaning that you're out of tune and you need to get in tune.
Correct. That's exactly right.
Okay, so if you're out of tune with the world, you need to tune up. If you're out of tune with your fellow man, you need to tune up. So on and so forth. You have to find a harmony, a balance,
Hmm.
a a a peace, an understanding, a cooperation, in order that there is no tension,
Right. What you're
disharmony.
what you're saying is we could sum it in one word: love, compassion,
Exactly.
or even compassion. I mean, in other words, we can do all the studying here and realize all these connections
Hmm.
and see how they'll work. But if you really want the shortcut, love the Lord your God with all your heart, soul, and strength, and do unto others, don't do unto others as you don't want done unto yourself. The rest is commentary. As
There
Hillel
you go.
says, he just solved this whole research effort.
Well, it's like I said, keep it simple, Solomon.
Yeah, keep it simple, stupid. Yeah, the KISS method. Yep, definitely. So it's definitely well worth studying more, but the reality is it just reinforces the whole concept: love, compassion, discipline. They're all there to help us. We have the answer. We got the shortcut answers. We don't have to spend hours and hours on this. It's fun to do it, don't get me wrong. I'm going to keep going. But but it just reinforces the whole idea of love.
Hmm. You know, I think I heard somebody say this once, or at least if they didn't, it made me think of it. Uh, we're all tuning forks. Some
Okay.
of us just need a good knock upside the head to get us in the right tune.
Speak of yourself. Yeah, no.
Look, you're a little out of tune. Let me help you.
Yes. Yes, bang bang. Very true.
Okay. Well, this part's good. I've got some related material that I've been studying. If you want to hear it, we will. We've been about an hour's mark, or we can knock it off here.